Hi students, we are looking at chapter 3 in our consumer behavior class, another interesting chapter all about perception. The interesting thing about these chapters going forward is it's taking things that you're already doing in your everyday life or observing about others, and they're putting definitions to things and explaining them in a way that hopefully makes sense. So let's go through this, and I will add in my examples. There's a lot of videos that you'll be watching on your own. Please take a look at them. They're really interesting, actually. And they really explain the information just a little bit further for you. Okay, so the design of a product is often the key driver of its success or failure. So I have a picture of Bang energy drink. Now, as much as I don't enjoy energy drinks at all, as a marketer, I look at this and I'm like, wow, it's a taller can. It's bigger than a Red Bull. That's one of the competitions. It's not as like monster looking. It's pinks and blues. It's kind of cool looking. It has a fun name, Rainbow Unicorn. So it's intriguing. So this is very important to the success or failure of a product. Of course, the product actually has to be good as well. But, you know, the first impression of something is the packaging. So sensation is the immediate response of our sensory receptors to basic stimuli. So marketers use this to their advantage when they're promoting products. They connect with us with, it could be something visual, it could be something that smells nice, a sound, touch and texture, taste and odor. And we're going to go through each one of these areas in the next few slides. But hedonic consumption is known as the multisensory emotional sensations. So hedonic consumption is something like going to an all-inclusive spa. It's something hedonistic. It's something that's over the top, spoiling ourselves. Okay, more on sensory marketing. Companies think carefully about the impact of sensations on their product experiences. Marketers' messages are more effective when they appeal to many of our senses at the same time, which is somewhat hard to do. So I have a great video here. Coke Zero, when they first came out with a whole video of, or a whole promotion, I should say, of how you're going to be able to taste Coke Zero through television and different experiences. And you'll see what they did to connect with the customer in a very unusual and creative way. But I also have some pictures of some companies here that connect with us as well. So on the left, I have Lush. If you don't know what Lush is, it's a great soap store that has a lot of different flavors and scents, and you get to touch the product and you get to create your own product, and there's lots of cool colors, and they use the graphics of, you know, something that's organic or homemade, and they give back to their community. They use organic products, so you really do get that sense of it from that store. We're going to go into the Yankee Candle here. And again, we all know these candles, sometimes overwhelming for people, but it's kind of like Bath and Body Works for me. I love going in there. There's lots of different scents, the lighting is great. I like everything, the way things are set up. You can sample products. And then of course the deadly Cinnabon over here on the right. They just, you know, light up the malls, and hopefully, you know, they will again as we are opening the malls now. But that scent just wafts through the malls. So does Aunt Annie's pretzels. Just fabulous smell, and suddenly you're craving one. This is not by accident. So let's get into vision. So colors influence our emotions. That's why I have red here. It gets our heartbeat going. Some reactions to color come from our learned behavior. So, you know, we were taught that, you know, green means go, red means stop, yellow means slow down. We're also taught as in a young age that pink is for girls and blue is for boys. And age can affect our responsiveness to color, absolutely. White cars and Florida. So yes, you might think about white cars in Florida because it's not that dark color that attracts the sun, but it also affects elderly people. Your vision is not as sharp, and a lot of colors are kind of not as bright and vibrant. And so that's why a lot of elderly people are attracted more to white cars. And I have to admit, I have a white car, but I see perfectly fine. I just happen to have a white car. There are also corporate colors that are out there, and that's called trade dress. It's kind of a funny saying, but it means, what colors connect you with a company's logo. If I say Coke, you're going to know immediately the red can. If I say McDonald's, you're immediately going to say, oh, the red M and the gold, or I should say the golden arches, yellow M and the golden arches, and you're connecting with those colors. All of that is very purposeful, and we're going to get into that a little bit more here in these slides. So if you look at the different applications of color on the left, it talks about associations and then where it's used in marketing. So, this is kind of like what goes on behind the curtain here that creates kind of a connection with us. It's all very purposeful. So let's go down the list a little bit here. Yellow, for instance, is optimistic and youthful, used to grab window shoppers and attention, the for sale signs. Red is energy, think Red Bull, often seen in clearance sales. Blue is trust and security, and that's a lot of banks use the color blue. And you can certainly think of other brands on your own here to associate. Green, they have wealth here, but it also has to do with health and wellness. You think of Whole Foods, it's used to create relaxation in stores. I know that KFC came out with a meatless chicken product, and they used the color green because they wanted to associate that with a product that is healthy. Orange is aggressive, call to action, subscribe, buy, or sell. Black is powerful and sleek, so it's connected with luxury items. And purple is soothing, usually beauty or anti-aging products are connected with this. And you certainly can think of many other products that are connected to all of these colors. But the point of this is now that you know the information, so when you're out and about now that we're freed from our homes, look at signs, look at the outside of stores, look at the mail that you get, what gets your attention and the why behind it. So dollars and cents, like color, odor is also gets us connected, okay? And it also stays in our memory. So I don't know if you've had this experience, but and it's usually positive with food. If you smell something like an apple pie or some kind of smell of like a pot roast or tomato sauce, that reminds me of like a Sunday dinner or something delicious that like my mother-in-law used to make with garlic. So scent marketing is a form of sensory marketing that we may see in, say, lingerie or detergents and more. And I have this great video here that it's about 4 minutes long. It's a really great one to view, but it kind of goes through how companies use this to their advantage. Like, for example, you think of Hollister, those kinds of stores you go in, very heavily scented and loud music. It's a little bit dark. All of this is to get us in this like cool mood to purchase. Another place is like upscale hotels have a particular scent that is their own scent. Also think of places like spas. You usually have that like lavender, relaxed smell. So there's scent marketing is really part of the whole package of how marketers connect with us. So again, think about this. Now that we're out and about in malls, stores, grocery stores certainly are big proponents of this. At certain times of the day, they're pumping out in the bakery the smell of, fresh baked breads. This is not by accident. Don't go in hungry. You will buy more than you expected. Okay, so key concepts. Sound is something that's so interesting and unique, that the way marketers connect with us. So it's not just, say, on television, but it's also on the radio. So there's a thing called an audio watermark, and it's a brand establishes their own sounds. So think of this Coke I have here. When you think of that, I'm going to make my own sound effect here. When you turn the bottle cap, or on the can, when it goes, you could get the same effect from beer. But it's that like effervescent kind of sound that knows that something refreshing is on the way. Music and other sound effects definitely affect our behavior and feelings. That's called sound symbolism. It's a process by which a way of words or sounds influence our assumptions about what is. It describes attributes such as size. Phonemes are vowel consonants that sound like K's or P's, and they're more likely to be recognized with hard consonants like Kellogg's or Pepsi. So these letters are used to get our attention and connect with us, as well as the sound. So I have a couple things here I want you to look at. Remember I told you there's a lot of videos connected with this. So T-Mobile, they have their like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, okay? You can listen to the real thing. It's like 3 seconds, but they call it their audio watermarking. And then I also have an article here from Business Insider, the most recognizable brand audio logos, and it could be da-da-da-da-da, and it's McDonald's. Okay, I'm loving it. So that's such an amazing way to recall a product. And I do believe I ask you to think about that in one of your field exercises, or maybe that's my advertising class. I'm not sure, but think about it. What do you hear on the radio? Or you could be in another room and hear a sound and know that it's T-Mobile. Oh, it's McDonald's. Oh, it's State Farm or whatever. They're not even using words. So that's an amazing way to get our attention through sound. Okay, key concepts in the use of touch. So many of us buy things online, but many of us need to touch a product to connect with it, to then purchase it. Okay, this is called the endowment effect. Remember I told you in the beginning of the semester, things that you already do, we're going to put definitions to them, and you'll then see them on the quizzes. Okay, the endowment effect is that touch it, and then I'll buy it. So I have the store here, Brookstone. If you're not familiar with it, it's one of those stores you go in, similar to like a Bath and Body Works or a Lush, where they're like, oh, try the product out, try the moisturizer, see what it smells like, have the experience. So this store is really into it. I mean, you could sit down and get massaged, or you can use the product and see how comfortable or cushiony it is on your feet, or, if you're getting a heating element for your neck massager. They have all kinds of cool stuff in there, but it's an experiential kind of a store, and this is called haptic sense, and it's the need to touch. It's a confirmation that we perceive is real when we touch it. Okay, how can e-retailers, this is a good question to think about in marketing, how can e-retailers get in on haptic marketing? Well, now with COVID-19, no one was going to stores. So a lot of companies do different things to connect us. I think of eyeglass companies. They allow us to upload our face and then try different glasses on, like Warby Parker does this, or they do things where you can see what people of your size look like in a particular dress or outfit. So there's different ways that e-retailers are trying to make us feel like de-risk it for us. And that's the idea behind haptic marketing. And more so now than ever, being that we couldn't go out of the house for 2 months or more. Okay, key concepts in taste. So taste, of course, is a huge driver behind 46 billion Americans that we spend on food and beverages each year. All foods combine 5 basic tastes. You've got sweetness, sourness, bitterness, saltiness, and what's called umami. That's savory. So sometimes we like to mix up our sweet and savories together, but it's what we call mouthfeel. So if, say, a potato chip isn't crunchy, then it doesn't have the good mouthfeel that we're looking for. If a piece of pizza doesn't have that pull, when you go to bite it, it doesn't have that mouthfeel that we're looking for. That's really big for companies to connect with their customer that way. And that's where product sampling comes in. It's a huge business, allowing us to taste before we buy, or drink before we buy. The problem is, with COVID-19, I don't know that places like Costco will be giving out too many samples in the near future. And that's going to hit their business a lot, because they sell a lot of product to people with some disposable income that are looking for new things. People love walking around Costco and basically eating like an entire meal. And I have to say, I was there recently and it was kind of like, oh, where's the sampling people? They're nowhere to be found, and for obvious reasons, but all of you know what it's like to try a sample of something and connect with it, and then you buy it or you think it tastes terrible. I know that when my daughter got into FAU for signing day, Coke was on campus sampling their coconut water. And the interesting part was that I liked the coconut water. I think it was like Coco Loco, but my husband tasted it and just like practically choked, thought it was disgusting. So it can go one way or the other. Okay, augmented and virtual reality, really like the next place we're going. Not that we're not already there for many companies in marketing. And this is when media superimpose one or more digital layers of data, images or video over a physical object, like a 3D movie. Augmented reality, or AR, is a big business, and it's projected in the $120 billion range. And different apps are being formed. Virtual reality, another cool area, provides an immersive experience. A lot of like car companies have this virtual reality so that you could feel like you're really inside the car and driving it. There's a drive toward integrating between the physical sensation and the digital information. Again, I have another really cool video that is like the top 10 marketing with augmented and virtual reality. So check it out. It's really cool. They do one for Coke. And it really also connects with customers because it takes a product that may be old, like Coke has been around for, hundreds of years, and it brings it into this like modern time, and makes it more relevant to the audience. Okay, stages of perception. So there's 3 stages that allow us to translate what we call raw stimuli into something that is meaningful. And so first we have to be exposed to it. It has to get our attention, and then we interpret whether or not we relate to the product or not. So in this perceptual process, it shows you on the left-hand side on this graph that we have all different sensory stimuli, whether it's sight, sound, smell, taste, and texture, and whatever our receptors are. So that could be, obviously, sight is with our eyes, sounds our ears, smells nose, taste mouth, texture skin. And that we first get exposure to it, Then it gets our attention, and then we interpret. So this is just more of a graphic to show you a little, connect with this process a little bit more, our perceptual process. So the first stage is this: key concepts in exposure. Sensory threshold is what we are capable of perceiving. Psychophysics, integrating physical environment into our personal world. Okay, absolute threshold, minimum amount of stimulation a person can detect. It must be sufficient enough to register. Differential threshold, the ability to detect changes in or differences between stimuli. The if and when we notice is important to marketers. JND is called just noticeable difference. And lastly, Weber's law is the amount of change required to make an impact. So how does this relate back to marketing? So companies, for instance, are changing their logo, changing their packaging, changing their pricing, things like that. And how much of that really clicks with us? Sometimes they can, lower a price or raise a price, or lower the packaging size or increase the packaging size. That usually doesn't happen. But how quickly do we connect with that? Are we really even aware of this? And how much does it take for us to be aware of it is the question. So I think of things like ice cream. We used to be able to buy a half a gallon of ice cream. Now the ice cream has somehow shrunk. Packaging for cereals, chips, things like that, they get slightly smaller, and they still charge us at the same price. So how much are we noticing, and how much of an impact is that making on our purchase? Okay, so I have an example here of IKEA. They redesigned their logo. You can barely tell, but it's enough. They took their registered trademark and put it inside the yellow. They made it a little smaller. So little subtle changes most people wouldn't notice. Okay, obviously Pepsi over time has changed their logo, and it's very different. That's as of 2009. They haven't changed it too much here 2020. But certainly if you look at some movies, timepiece movies back in the 80s, for instance, you're going to see those old Pepsi logos. And I'm such a marketing nerd that when I watch things like The Americans on Netflix or other time traveling movies, I always look for, oh, look, they have that old label, or they have that old product that we remember from when we were younger. So, and it also makes the movie authentic as well. So Gap, for example, they've rebranded, and I say for a moment because on the right is the Gap logo that we all know. Well, on the left, they changed it up, and clearly they didn't do marketing research because they changed it and they got a lot of flack for it, a lot of feedback that was negative, and it was so much so that they changed it back to the original logo, which usually doesn't happen. But again, we want what we want as consumers, and we feel comfortable with it. The left side was too much. It was too different. Whereas the IKEA one or the Pepsi one, I think it's a slow evolution. You can't change too much. We can't handle it as consumers. Okay, so here's one that everyone always talks about in advertising, and it's called subliminal advertising. It refers to the stimulus below the level of our actual awareness. And there's no actual proof that this process even has an effect on our consumer behavior, but it's definitely sexually related embedded messages. So this is an example here with Heineken. Now, clearly, if you turn the bottles upside down, we know what that looks like. And there's a lot of other information out there. If you took my advertising class, we talk about it briefly. But whether or not it even has an effect on us purchasing, I don't believe there's any real evidence of that out there. Okay, stage 2, okay? We've been exposed to it, now it's the attention part. And attention is the extent to which processing activity is devoted to a particular stimulus. So we do a lot of multitasking now, and a lot of things get past us. And they call this Wexting, walking and texting, or pedestrian. If you're in New York, you're gonna walk around, not now, of course, looking down, looking at your phone, and running into people. We don't necessarily. It takes a lot to get our attention. Is the bottom line. We do experience a sensory overload, and it's just too much sometimes. I mean, everywhere you go is advertising and some kind of promotion. It could be in a bathroom, in a stadium, certainly on campus at FAU with sponsored buildings, okay? It's all everywhere. Perceptual selection is when attending to small portions of the stimuli to which they are exposed. So marketers like to break through and this clutter that's out there, and allow us to kind of pick and choose what gets our attention. But how can marketers break through things? They put things at eye level at stores. They use GIF files, funny videos, TikTok, offer loyalty cards. So certainly you can think of some ideas on your own of how companies offering a discount. Sure, bright colors are great, smells are great, textures are great as well. But there's so many products out there. So how does something connect with us and cut through that clutter and get our attention? Okay. Personal selection factors. Perceptual filters are based on our past experiences. So perceptual vigilance, pay attention. I have this need. That's why I'm paying attention, because maybe my car just broke down. I just got a flat tire. I want to go back to school. I'm thirsty. I'm hungry. That's when all of a sudden we're paying attention to, the ads, what we're getting on our phone, what we're seeing on when we're driving, whether it's a billboard or what we're hearing on the radio. Perceptual defense, we may not process or we have a distorted meaning with it. So the bottom line is we see what we want, and we don't see what we don't see. Okay, I don't have that correctly on this, but sometimes you could be with a friend, a parent, a cousin, a sibling, and we could be exposed to the same exact thing, but we get something different out of it because my needs are not your needs, and so I might see something different in that ad than you do. Sometimes it's gender related too. Factors leading to adaptation. So I'm no longer paying attention and something's too familiar. So that's a problem. So that's why companies always are changing things up, coming up with something humorous, a series of something, nostalgia. Okay, so sometimes it's the intensity of something. If the sounds are too low or the colors are too dim, you need to kind of brighten it up a little bit. I say give it a facelift. Consumers can habituate, which basically means that it's just by habit now. We're not really looking at the fine details of something. Exposure means we have too much exposure to something. And relevance, if I can't relate to it, I'm not going to look at it. It's not getting my attention, and I find it irrelevant. And it doesn't, relate to my needs. Okay, stimulus selection factors help us cut through the clutter as well. I love this ad. This is stripes on a walking area of a street, and then you have Mr. Clean there with his clean stripe. So this is also known as guerrilla marketing. It's getting our attention in a way that we weren't expecting. That's a great way to connect with us. It could be because the size of something is a lot, or the color of it, the positioning of it, like at eye level, is it on the right hand side? The novelty, because it's in an unexpected place. So, or it could be using certain words that get our attention. So I do find this to be very interesting. And if any of you have companies or you're working at internships this summer where you're working on people's websites, it's important to note that yes, this is a website, not the Bermuda Triangle, but this is called the Golden Triangle. And it means there's been studies done on consumers when visiting a website through eye tracking information that people typically spend most of their time on a website up here to that left hand side in the yellow, orange, and red section. So you have something important to say it up there. Don't go over here to the right and don't go down. You can only get our attention for a short amount of time. So try it out and see if it's true the next time you visit a website, or maybe you're working on a website for a client this summer. Interpretation. We kind of just brushed on this a couple seconds ago, looking at the other slides. Everyone interprets things differently because of experiences that we've had. So for instance, if I've had good experiences with the name brand, I'm probably going to repurchase it and not go drifting off into new brand names. Okay? And that's really important. So interpretation refers to the meaning we assign to sensory stimuli, which is based on what they call a schema or a set of beliefs that we have. So I have this picture here, and I think this is pretty interesting because I think we know what these letters are, but we also know that this word kitchen is not spelled right, but we want to make it kitchen. So we are kind of, adding meaning to this from our own experiences. Hopefully, you know that should spell kitchen. It is up to us to determine the meaning based on our past experiences, expectations, and needs. We tend to project our own desires or assumptions onto products and ads. Interpretational biases. You've heard of the eye of the beholder. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What I think is beautiful, you may not think is beautiful. What I think tastes good, same thing. So this is called Gestalt psychology. So you didn't realize how much psychology went into consumer behavior and marketing, but it's all about that. So Gestalt psychology is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So number one, closure. People perceive an incomplete picture as complete. Similarity. Consumers group together objects that share similar physical characteristics, and that's called the power of association. And then last is figure ground. One part of the stimulus will dominate the figure while the other part recedes into the background. An example of this I like to say is the FedEx logo here. When you get to the EX part, there is an arrow. Again, this is not on accident. Sorry for my dog barking in the background. Similarity, let's go back up to that. The power of association, why it's important to associate different things together. Companies do this all the time. Maybe a status symbol of some sort, connecting, certain fashion with certain events. But again, we automatically group things together in our mind and associate things together. So it may be food products, it may be a restaurant, it may be fashion, it may be makeup, beauty, something like that. Okay, so the field of semiotics helps us to understand how marketers use signs and symbols to create meaning. Consumers use products to express their social identities. I think we can all agree that certain things that we purchase say something about us. It could be a pair of shoes, a car, the neighborhood we live in, the university we decide to go to, a purse, pocketbook, whatever you want to call it. Lots of things connect with us and our social identities. And it could be a logo that we have. It could be you know, a alligator on your shirt for Lacoste. It could be a polo player. It could be a T for Tory Burch. Whatever it is, these symbols create a meaning. And we read people that way. And we look at them and we look at what they're wearing, what they surround themselves with, and how they express themselves. So semiotic relationships. Okay, so we're going to break down an ad here, and I want you to understand how companies, marketing and advertising companies, use symbols to connect, help us. I call it like take mental shortcuts. Okay, so let's look at this. We see this picture of a cowboy come to where the flavor is for Marlboro or Marlboro Light cigarettes. Okay, so the object is the product that is the focus of the ad. Okay, the product here is cigarettes. Okay, there's a sign or an image, and the interpretant is otherwise known as, what's the meaning behind having this cowboy on here? So that's derived from a particular sign. Okay, so icon resembles the product. Okay, you know, this is a rugged, macho cowboy that's out on the range or wherever on his horses and his farm. And the index is a sign that shares properties. Okay, and symbol is the association. So let's look over here to the right. Okay, so up here I have the Marlboro cigarettes in the lavender at the very top of the triangle. Go down here to the right to the Rugged American. Okay, go over here to the left, that's a cowboy, and it goes up to the cigarettes again. Okay, so what we're trying to do here is we want you to have the product of the cigarettes and this image of a cowboy, and the interpretation here or the meaning here is that, like, if you're a rugged kind of guy, this is what you're going to smoke. Okay, a lot of companies do this. They use sex appeal, certainly. They use a lot of different things to symbolize and connect with us, so that we relate to their product. So here's an example. What's a semiotic relationship here? So Red Lobster, okay, they have traceable, sustainable, responsible, fresh fish, live lobster. So, I mean, personally, I'm not a big fan of Red Lobster, but what they're trying to do in this ad is show you that, you know, where do they get their product? It is sustainable. They're being responsible for in the environment. They're catching their product in a humane way, if you can say that. That they do have fresh fish. They have the ocean in the background. They have the actual lobster. So it's all these things are working together. So we have a sense of, you know, what this restaurant stands for and what the symbolism is. But there's symbolism in everything. If you get a magazine, take a look at it, or look at an ad that you get on Instagram. Take a look at it, dissect it a little bit, see if you can find what the relationship is, and see if it's working on you. So emojis and hyperreality. Okay, you all know what an emoji is, okay? They're being overused right now, with my family anyway. It's basically a shorthand to express our feelings, and I have the symbols on the right. We're all very familiar with those. I do admit they do come in handy when you're just trying to make a point quickly. Hyperreality is an interesting concept. The process of making real what is initially simulation or hype. Artificial associations between product symbols and the real world take on lives of their own. So I have here the unofficial Harry Potter cookbook. Clearly, Harry Potter and his gang are not real, but guess what? His cookbooks are selling. Dunder Mifflin, for example. We all love The Office. They have products that they sell out there, whether it be a t-shirt or that says Dunder Mifflin or something about beets. Other information out there is products of a basically a world that doesn't exist. Okay, positioning strategy. I believe this is what your field exercise is on. Okay, using elements of the marketing mix to influence the consumer's interpretation of its meaning in the marketplace relative to its competition. Okay, I'll get to that. It sounds like a lot. Let me get to the middle section. Marketers use dimensions to carve out a brand's position in the marketplace. Okay, so when you're looking at something like a Bang energy drink, that is a huge area of the store. There's a lot of energy drinks out there. Big, small, fat, short, colorful, have different caffeine in it. Everyone, for instance, has out a new malt beverage, whether it's Truly or White Claw or now another seltzer drink from Bud Light is coming out. So that's an example. Okay, so you're trying to carve out a place in the marketplace. What makes you different? Do you have a different taste? Do you have a different size of your can or bottle? Or do you have a different price point? How are you making yourself different in the marketplace? And more importantly, do we as consumers understand the difference? That's where the marketing and messaging comes in. You know, if I don't know that something's different, then, you know, you're not doing a good job. So you might have more protein in your drink, or you're adding caffeine or energy, or, you know, you have a price point that's cheaper or even more expensive. As we know, if something costs more money, usually it means it's better quality. Not all the time, but these are positioning strategies. Okay, so I love these examples from the text. Okay, so we think of a lifestyle brand. You might not remember this, but Grey Poupon, the Dijon mustard, would have a commercial where two very expensive cars, Rolls Royces, were next to each other, and they passed a Grey Poupon from one car to the other, and they said, "Excuse me, but can I borrow your Grey Poupon?" Was it? I know it sounds ridiculous, but it gave us that idea that, oh, it's an elite product, it's higher end, okay, it's high class. Price leadership, L'Oreal sells a higher end face cream, okay, and L'Oreal also says, you know, that I'm worth it, so you're going to pay a little money. What about things like attributes, like the Bounty is a quicker picker-upper. Product class, the Spider Eclipse is like sporty, so it's in like the convertible class. Okay, think about your competition. Certainly in the world of insurance, there's a ton of competition out there. A certain occasion, so you can say, you know, use this particular product when you're trying to get rid of odors or freshen your breath. That's another way to position yourself. Users, whether they're like for Axe products, which are like young men trying to be attractive and smell good. They have Levi's Dockers here, targeted to young men. And lastly, quality. So at Ford, quality is number one. That's important to people, that the product quality, that it lasts long. So think about all these positioning areas here on the left. Okay, how are people positioning themselves in the marketplace? It's really important because there's a ton of competition out there. Okay, this is our last slide. So I just want you to think on your own. So how do your favorite brands position themselves in the marketplace? So you might like one cosmetic over another, or you decide to choose one gym over another, or a certain kind of shoes or sunglasses, whatever it might be. So which possible positioning strategy seems to be the most effective? Maybe right now, when you're not making a whole lot of money and you're on a real tight budget, you go after the dollar store stuff, a little cheaper, versus maybe another time in your life when you want like higher quality, it's going to last long. So I want you to think about these things. We will be talking about chapter 4 next. And just as a reminder, you need to set up an appointment with me to have a call to answer any questions about your group project. Hopefully you've introduced one another or been introduced as a team. I know some of you were trying to get into teams. So hopefully that's worked for you. So look for chapter 4 next.